Ja, net die
Yeah, amazing. Lots of people talk about your school, so it's very exciting. Oh yeah.
Yeah, in positive VBS.
Oh good.
And he's then the internal stimulator and coach to do that.
Yeah. When we started, I didn't know it was that big. And implementing, and every year I saw the results and the effects.
Oh really?
So this is Mr. Sugai, this is meneer Sugai.
Good morning everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Goed. Ja,
Oh. So,
Hij wilde graag weten hoe het met jullie was.
goed.
aha, okay.
Denk ik.
You're all working hard?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Can you see we have words. And here in Holland we have to make it suitable to our culture.
Yeah. But I can recognize what's saying about too. That's good. That's great.
We will not interrupt anymore.
Yeah.
Veel plezier nog.
Thank you.
En wat zeggen jullie dan?
Goodbye.
Well done.
Come and visit me in the United States, okay?
Hij zegt kom gezellig op visite in Amerika.
Is daarmee om kunnen gaan?
Wacht eventjes. Verder, we laten hem eventjes doen. En dan gaan we kijken, mogen jullie even zachtjes praten met elkaar en kijken op. Let op, wat er gebeurt. Kom een beetje zitten glensen. Ja, kom maar.
Wauw, very good. Heel goed.
En dan kunnen we heel goed luisteren, hè. Weet je precies wat we moeten doen als de jingle gaat? Ja?
They're using a thing.
Yeah.
Like okay. Yeah. So they can hear signal, they can see.
Everybody else is doing it. Yeah.
Dankjewel jongens, jullie mogen doorgaan.
And where you don't have to
Yes. Whoa!
They are fantastic.
Thank you for letting me visit your classroom. You are all very nice. Very much. Thank you very much.
Twice?
Do it twice?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do the whole thing. Ready?
Yes. Oké, jongens, even werken.
Whoa! Thank you very much. Put your hands down.
Ja, handen naar beneden. Goed
Thank
zo.
you for letting me visit your classroom. That was very nice. I very much liked it. Thank you very
Meneer
much.
vindt het dus heel fijn.
Everyone come to America and visit, okay?
Oh, yes, sure. We will do it.
And what did you see there? Wat heb je gezien in Australia? Wat voor school heb je daar gezien? Weet je nog?
Ik weet niet hoe die heet, maar dan hadden ze precies hetzelfde.
He was with his family to Australia, and there they found a school with PBS, and he was surprised, like, hey, it's not only the Harlekijn
That's right.
which is doing PBS, but also in Australia.
I know, that's right.
And they made pictures. I received them with the values, and with these pictures we can learn also a little bit, because it was very nice in the way they showed all the pupils what was expected.
That's right.
Mooie foto's die ik heb gekregen van die school die ik heb gezien.
Maar wat het wel grappig was, van de PBS, er was eentje super grappig. Als het super heet was daar, dan mocht je alleen maar met dat ding spelen. En er was in één klas, volgens mij in groep 4, er zaten iets van 45 kinderen. En dan als ze buiten speelden en het was super heet, moesten ze allemaal onder zo'n klein aftakje spelen.
He's telling that it was a very hot climate there, and children have to play in a place outside, but even it's covered with a roof because
Yeah, right.
it's not very interesting.
In het Engels verder. Everybody, welcome to the Harlekijn. It's an honor to introduce to you Professor George Sugai. He's working for the University of Connecticut in America. Professor of Special Education, Director of the Center for Behavior Education and Research, and also co-director from the Center of Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. I'm really proud to introduce one of the founders of school-wide positive behavior support. Give a warm applause to Professor George Sugai. When I was preparing this interview, I was searching on the name George Sugai, and I found a personal CV of 85 pages. Did you know that?
No.
And it was very interesting because you started your professional career in 1971, and that's a good year because I was born that year. You started as a head counselor of multiple handicapped children. Why this early interest for social behavior and social involvement?
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here. Very much appreciate the chance to be able to share with you some ideas. It's great to come to your school.
A little bit.
And it's great to come to your school. I've talked to some of your children. I've talked to some of the teachers. It's a wonderful school. Your principal has done a wonderful job with the staff to create a very welcoming environment. So you should be very proud of this school. It makes me very excited to come to the Netherlands and see the impact of some of the work that's happening here. So it's great. A little bit about my history, which is what the question is about. And I apologize, I only speak English. So if you're having trouble, just ask a neighbor to translate, and I will do the best I can. I was born in California, and I went to school in California to become a botanist. I really wanted to study plants. And when one of my first jobs was to work as a nature director in an Easter seal camp. And that's a summer camp for children with physical disabilities. And one of the cabins, some of the campers, the counselor got sick, and they needed a new counselor. So they asked me, the nature director, to work with kids with disabilities for that summer. And so that's when I switched my career from working with trees to working with children, because the children became much more interesting to me than the trees were. And I began working with children with physical disabilities, with Down syndrome and cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. And then after that, I became very interested in children who were having difficulties with their behaviors. And that's when I started working with children who had some behavioral difficulties.
Well, thank you. And if somebody from the audience wants to ask a question, we have a microphone, and Zdenka will come there and give you the microphone. You can ask your question yourself to Mr. Sugai. There are many parents here, teachers, principals of other schools, and we all tried a lot of things, a lot of behavior things in our lives. Why, and in the classrooms and at home, why should we try or work with PBS? Or in America we say PBIS. Why?
Let me start by saying that there's really nothing special about PBS, except that what it tries to do is focus on teaching what we like to call pro-social skills, the appropriate behaviors for children, things like anger management, things like problem solving, and really basic skills, like how to be respectful of each other, how to be responsible around your own behaviors, and how to really be safe as you move through school environments and communities and so forth. One thing we're very, very interested in is being able to support academic success so that children can learn to read, do math, learn English, learn Dutch, learn art and music. But the only way you can learn those kinds of skills is if you have good social skills, if you can follow teacher directions, if you can work cooperatively with your friends, if you can make transition from play to work. I was visiting classrooms today, and your children were doing a wonderful job following teacher cues and rules. They were doing a wonderful job greeting strangers like me as I came into the room. And those are the kind of social skills that we really think are important, that we emphasize in positive behavioral support. You should really think that those skills are simple, but it's very difficult to teach those to children. And that's what PBS does, is organize schools to help teach those kinds of If I could do that in 5 days, I would be very rich. One thing to be very aware of, we're talking about changing cultures, classroom cultures. What are the expectations? And those are very difficult things to do, especially for children, especially for our teachers. And it takes 3 to 5 years for those kinds of things to become automatic. But you can actually experience some of those things fairly quickly, as soon as you teach those expectations very formally. I was in a class this morning, and I rang a little bell, and immediately I got student attention. And now that took a little bit of time to acquire, but once you have it, it becomes very quick and secondary. But his comment, it doesn't take 5 days, it takes a little bit of time to change mostly adult perspectives. Kids change very quickly when the expectations are clear. But changing the adults' expectations can be sometimes more difficult. Or changing the principal's perspective can be very difficult as well. And that's where a lot of the time is. But it does take time to change large schools, but it also becomes very simple working with individual students. But if I could do it in 5 days, I'd be driving a BMW right now.
Nice answer. There was one of the children of Group 8 who wants to ask something about one of the first PBS schools.
Where was the first PBS school, and who did the children and parents react to it?
Where was the first PBS school, and how did children and parents react to it?
Right. So that's an excellent question. Nice reading. PBIS got its start in about 1990, 1992 or so, before some people were born. And what that really was about 5 or 6 schools that were very interested in changing their school from being very reactive, kids out of control, teachers yelling and pointing, and saying, this isn't really a nice school. And so they came to us and they said, how can we change the climate of our school? So there were 5 or 6 schools that became demonstration sites for us, and that's where we originally developed PBS as an idea. Now I have to smile because one of those schools was my wife's school. My wife is a school principal, and she basically told me what PBS was. I always listen to my wife. You should always do that.
That's a good advice. I look to some of the people in the audience, it's very good advice.
That's right. So if you ever meet my wife, you should tell her that she was the inventor of PBS. And all I did is put it in a package. I'm a researcher, so I said, what are the critical features of PBS that made it work? And what makes it work is if you have staff members who work together, if you focus on prevention, which means catching kids before they make a mistake. It's also about making sure that kids understand that learning academics, learning to read, is the most important thing about school. But you also have to have good behaviors to be successful. So the first school started in 1992, that was called PBS, and we learned from it. Now we have about 20,000 schools in the United States. And we're having some countries now, like Norway, like Netherlands, like New Zealand, I was talking to a young student today, I don't know if he's here, it's in Australia, and it's also appearing in Saudi Arabia and some other countries as well.
Well, nice. And
Thanks for your question.
yeah, there was another question about one of the founders of PBS, because Mr. Sugai is one of the founders. Who wants to ask that question? Lotte?
You are one of the founders of PBS. Can you tell us something of the other founders?
Yes. So first thing it's very important for you to know, I am very lucky. I get to sit up here and have you all look at me as if I'm the PBS founder. The truth is, my wife knows. Now the truth is that there were a group of us, a group of people who organized this idea called PBS. There were some researchers, there were some teachers, there were some parents, there were some children who together really came up with the idea about how important it is to change school climate. There are 3 of us who are the co-directors of a national center in the United States, myself, Rob Horner, and Tim Lewis. But we are just, as I like to tease, we are just the mouth of PBS. We collected all this information about how effective schools operate, and then I get to sit in these special chairs and tell people about what it is. I'm called the founder, but I'm really just a person who collects the information and sends it out to people to be able to use. So I am the founder because I get to sit here, but I'm really just the mouth that tells people about what effective schools imply.
Okay, I want to show you a picture. With the question, what's normal behavior? We see a dog here who's cleaning his own shit and cleaning the dog shit. In fact, it should be normal behavior, but that the dog is doing it, it's not normal. But this was the question the Harlekijn asked herself. What's normal behavior? Because when we started with PBIS, we have a lot of families with all different ways of thinking about normal behavior.
You know, I'm not sure that there is such a thing as normal. But I do believe that every setting, every place, has some norms or expectations. As I look around the room, many of you are family members, and you have expectations and norms for your families. I am Japanese American. I am a 3rd generation Japanese American, which means my grandparents came from Japan and came to California. My parents were born in California. I was born in California. My family has norms, expectations for how things happen at home. But we also have expectations at school that allows learning to occur, that allows there to be order, that allows children to get along with each other. What's really good about PBS, what's really good about Harlekijn, is that they make sure that what the expectations are allow kids to be able to learn and to be safe and to walk in the hallways being quiet and so forth as being what the expectations are. Go to work, there are different expectations about what's acceptable. But there are some same similarities, like respect, responsibility, perseverance, honesty. Those are expectations that are the same in Netherlands, United States, but we have to be very clear about which are the unique and special expectations for school, for classroom, for work.
Thank you. And at the same time, there are groups of children passing by, and I would almost ask for applause by the way they come quietly inside. Very good. And look at this.
When a child doesn't know how to read, what do we do? When a child doesn't know how to swim, what do we do? When a child doesn't know how to behave, what do we do?
What do we do when a child doesn't know how to behave? We teach. And what can you say about PBS and teaching behavior?
It's a great video, and it's a very important message in that video. When a kid makes a math mistake, when a kid makes a reading mistake, we don't send them to the office. We don't send them to the corner. We don't send them to timeout. What do? We reteach. We teach the right way. When kids make a social behavior error, when they talk out without raising their hand, in the United States and some of our schools, we send them out of the room and we punish them. And we assume that punishment teaches. It's very, very important to understand that here at Harlekijn, if a student makes a social error, we tell them they've made a mistake, but we reteach. We say, don't forget, you have to raise your hand until your teacher calls on you. With social skills, it's really important to realize that, yes, there are consequences when you make a mistake, but you also have a chance to relearn the right way. If I look around the room, most of us have figured out how to manage our anger. But for children, it's very important that we teach them when they're young what it means to manage your anger the right way, so they don't learn the wrong way. And punishment is not a very good strategy for teaching how to do anger management, because all it really does is tell you that you've made a mistake. One thing that's really great about this school, because I watched it this morning, and one thing that's good about PBS, I think, is that we really focus on reteaching. So if a child makes a mistake, forgets to turn in their homework, uses an inappropriate word, we tell them that's unacceptable, and we tell them that that's something that we don't appreciate, but we always go back and say, this is how we do our homework, this is how we turn our homework in, or this is how we manage our anger the right way. Because it's really important for students to understand what is right and wrong, but you have to be able to know what the right is to be able to know what the wrong is.
Well, thank you. And it's interesting that especially older teachers always told me that this is what we did many years ago. And in some way we've forgotten to teach children to behave and to show them what it looks like. And talking about basics, this next picture, I think you can dream about it because you have... No? But you can tell a lot about the PBS pyramid.
Yes.
And what does it mean? Because now sometimes we focus only on children with this behavior, but this tells more.
Right. So the triangle is something we use in PBS that we borrowed from the wellness literature on prevention. And what that basically says is that it's really important to put a foundation down for everyone, so everyone can be successful. But some children need a little extra, and some children need a little extra on top of that. So let me give a quick example so you can answer for me, and it's okay, it's all right? How many of you in this room used an alarm clock to get up this morning? Please raise your hand if you used an alarm. Very good, thank you. How many of you used 2 alarm clocks to get up this morning, just in case you slept through the first one? Anybody? Thank you for being honest. How many of you called your mother and said, Mom, call me tomorrow morning to make sure I got up on time? You didn't? Thank you very much. Now, that's very good. My wife wakes me up every morning, right? That's a really good example of the triangle. What that means is most of us can survive with 1 alarm clock. That's all we need, right? Some of us need 2 alarm clocks because we need a little extra help. So your teachers in this school teach kids how to read, and they have a reading program. But some kids need 30 more minutes of reading to get it, to be good at it. And some kids need a little extra one-on-one help to learn to read. Your mom to call you, the 3rd alarm clock, right? PBS is about alarm clocks. What do we need to have for everyone to wake up and learn about respect? And what do some kids need that's a little extra to learn about respect? And what do some kids need for individual help because they're using misbehavior to try to learn how to be respectful? So it's about making sure that all kids get help in a positive way. But to understand, you have to have a school-wide foundation to start from. 1 alarm clock, right? Which is sort of the idea there. Another way to think about it, one more time, is that you all know, everybody in the room knows, to be healthy, you have to get good sleep, eat well, exercise, right? That's the foundation for good health. But some of you have to have a special trainer to help you diet, to help you get fit, and so forth. And some of you have to have medication to help you become fit, to make you healthy. That's the pyramid again, because some people need a little extra to be helpful. That's true of children also. For reading, for behavior, that's the triangle, right?
Okay, thanks. A good example, I will remember this. One of the children would like to ask about the US approach and the Dutch approach of PBS.
What's the difference in the US PBS approach and the Dutch PBS approach?
Good question.
Or aren't there any differences?
Yeah. So the question is, what are the differences? The first one is that PBS in the Netherlands, I don't understand it because it's all in Dutch. No. The truth is that PBIS has some core principles, some big, what I like to call big ideas. They're the same everywhere. You can go to Japan, you can go to Spain, you'll see the same core principles, like catch kids early before they make mistakes, like teach social skills, like make sure that you reteach when a kid makes a behavior error. Those are always going to be the same. What's different are some of the local cultural expectations, because they vary. Your food is different, some of your expectations are different, your language is different, but some of the core things are the same. I can walk into a classroom and I know exactly what's happening because I can see the teaching matrix on the wall. Even though I can't understand the words, I see respect, responsibility, and safety up on the wall. I know what those are. So what's really unique about PBS here is that you've made it unique to your culture. The kindergarten classrooms use pictures. The older classroom uses words, and so forth. There are differences based on individual skills, based on individual culture. Every one of the students in this room could easily go to the United States and go to a United States classroom that's a PBIS school, and have the only trouble they would have would be English, because they would see the same expectations about respect. They might need to know a little bit about what's the difference between this versus a hand raised versus whatever. But the difference is just that little bit of behavior. But everything else is the same.
Well, I'm talking about the signal. One parent told me once that since his child was on our school and he tried to give a compliment at home, but when he did this, the child became quiet.
You're right.
There was another question about from the children of Group 8 about worth spreading out PBS around the world.
Why do you think PBS is spreading around the globe in so many different countries?
Yeah, good question. He was asking about why is it spreading. I know that it's not because of me. I do know that it's because schools like this one are being noticed by others. And what happens when you're noticed is that word spreads. You need to know that around the world, schools are very important, and parents and teachers are very interested in making sure children are successful. And they're always looking for the best way to do it in a way that is going to be positive as opposed to being reactive or punishing. And examples like yours quickly spread. There was a reporter here who's taking pictures. That picture will go out in a newspaper, and that newspaper will go out into other places. I'm going to ask for some of these videos, and I'm going to show them in other places. You know, what happens is that word of mouth is probably the best distributor. I do research, and I write studies. Those don't spread very well. Nobody cares about research. But what does spread are positive, good examples. And your children are one of the best ones. I think there was one student who was saying he went to a school in Australia and he saw PBS in one of the classrooms there. And your son was talking about how neat it was that he could understand what was going on. But so, you know, so then now we got word going back across countries. So I think it's word of mouth, it's experience, and it's people wanting answers to making their schools safer.
Thank you. This picture, you can also see it there, I think. Yeah. You already told that PBS, it's not really new things. It's a lot of, we call it old wisdoms. what elements of PBS are innovative? Because learning from role models is a very old strategy which still works.
Right. So I'm going to tell a little story first. When I first started, like when I do a lecture like this, one time I did a lecture like this about, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And I invited my parents. And at that time, my dad was about 80 years old, my mom was about 75, and they came to an event just like this, and they heard me presenting. And I was teaching about how important it is to teach social skills, and what does classroom management look like, and what do good behavior children look like, and so forth. And I was saying you have to teach those kind of skills. And when I got done, my mom said, you have to teach that? You have to teach good manners. And what I said is that the manners aren't new, the social skills aren't new, but what's different is that in schools, what we have to do is, because there are so many kids and we have so many activities, we have to make it very clear what the expectations are. And so teaching manners and teaching behavior is about teaching it formally so that it becomes much more important to the children and to the teachers inside those settings. So, it really is common sense. But what is difficult is teaching large numbers of students in places like schools where you have so many things going on. I was watching a teacher this morning, and she was realizing that it's very difficult for her children to sit for long periods of time. And what she did is she said, let's teach the children how to do exercise every once in a while. Right? And you had them doing these little exercises for just a few minutes, and then they would sit down and they would study again, and they were better able to concentrate. Now, that was something she taught to the children. It wasn't something natural, but it was good manners, it was good common sense, but you had to build it into her routine. So what I'm trying to say to you is that the behaviors are simple, they're common sense. Even my 75-year-old mother says those are simple, but communicating those to children becomes much more difficult in schools where you have large numbers, where you have to concentrate on learning. And just like these children who are sitting here so well, that's a difficult skill to learn if you haven't learned that it's more respectful to sit quietly while somebody like me is presenting. So those are teachable skills, but it takes a little bit of energy to do that.
Okay, but next to this, there's a very interesting question from Principal Gedrag. Would you like to ask him yourself?
Yes.
Yeah? So
Dan doe ik het net als de anderen. Mr. Sugai, I'm glad with every initiative to improve the atmosphere in the family or in the school or wherever in the community we live. Could you tell me what do PBS teachers do to make children, students, aware and responsible of their own behavior?
Yes. So, one thing we want to do, always do, is we want to make sure that children become better self-managers, that they can take care of themselves. In this school, there are 3 rules, I think: respect, responsibility, and safety. And those 3 rules are very important to me because what they represent is the question you're asking. Safety means, how do you take care of the environment? How do you make sure that you are safe? How do you make sure your friends are safe? Respect is about how you interact with others. Your friends, your teachers, your parents, your other adults, people in stores. Those are skills that can be learned. But in order to use them on your own, you have to go out and practice those. But the one you're asking about is the one called respect. And what we find is when the school has a positive school climate, and they teach those very important social skills, and teachers and parents acknowledge their children for using them, they become internalized. They become inside the child. And then the child uses them more on their own. Parents in the room, you should be very proud of your children, because when I visited the classrooms, they were extremely respectful of me. And they were very responsible because they became quiet when I came in the room. I didn't have to tell them to do that. They did it on their own. Where did they get that from? They learned that from their teachers. They learned that from the principal. So your question's a very good one, because how do children learn to use it on their own? Well, they learn to use it on their own because we tell them that they're being successful with it, that it's the right thing to do. That's one of the responsibilities of parenting. That's one of the responsibilities of teaching, is to let children know what they're doing the right way and the wrong way so they can use the right way more often. If we don't give them that feedback, then they use whatever they think is the right way, and it gets them in trouble. But your question is very good, and there's some very good research that indicates that when kids are more successful academically, and when they're in safe, caring environments, they become better self-managers, their self-concepts go up, they're more willing to learn new things, and they're more willing to try new things. And they do it in a safer way as well. So there's always this question, is the environment too restrictive? It can be too restrictive if it's too punishing, but if you promote respect, responsibility, or whatever words you want to use that are more proactive, it tends to teach kids better self-confidence, which is the key thing, I think, about what your children are getting.
Well, thank you. One of the important elements of teaching behavior is using positive reinforcement. And I want to show a little video about using positive reinforcement.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon, I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please. Oh. Hey, Kim? Yeah. You know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall. You'll never guess who they got to replace me.
Okay. I know what you're doing. Really? Yes. You're using chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior. Very good. Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat. Actually, it turns out I can. Well, you shouldn't. There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose. Tweaking her personality. It's sanding off the rough edges, if you will. No, you're not sanding Penny. Are you saying that I am forbidden from applying a harmless, scientifically valid protocol that will make our lives better? Yes, you're forbidden. Bad, Leonard.
Did you know this movie?
I know that one.
You know that one. But it's the essential of using positive reinforcement, right?
So it's a very funny scene, and it's very important that you understand a little bit about what that was. One thing that's important about PBS is very important to give kids feedback about how they're doing. When kids get things right in spelling, when they do things in math, what do? We say, nice job, we give them a grade, we give them a point, we give them a credit. All it is feedback about how you're performing. All of you in this room, all these kids, they're very good learners. And they've actually learned to give feedback to themselves. I got that right, I need to keep doing that, and so forth. What's important about that message is that just that feedback is important. It gives us an idea about what's right and what's wrong, about doing the right thing. It's also very true that we can misuse punishment and we can misuse reinforcement.
Then it will be manipulation.
That's absolutely right. And it's very important to understand that we learn through feedback, but we can also manipulate. One of the most critical things about the work I do is making sure that teachers, parents, and others don't misuse punishment, don't misuse rewards, don't misuse acknowledgments, because this really is something that can cause some difficulties. But we want to make it authentic. We might want to make it real. We want to make it words that are important and useful to kids. We never want to use things that are manipulative, like you just saw, that forces or creates artificial kinds of learning situations. But it's always very difficult, that fine line between the two. But one of the basic principles about learning is you need feedback to know what's right and wrong, but you can also mislead people in which ways they go. One of the things that I think is really important about what you need to know about your kids is what they're learning how to do is to self-acknowledge, self-recognize when I'm doing the right thing, when I'm doing the wrong thing. Gee, I showed up to class on time, that's important. And the way they learn that is by feedback from their teachers and from yourselves about what's the right way. I want to do one more thing, just to switch topics just for a second. And that question about, your comment, principle about does it become internalized? There was a comment from, I can't remember who gave me the comment, I guess it was in the car this morning from Chris, who was saying, your kids who are learning the skills here at this school, some of them are now going to the middle school. And the middle school teachers are saying, we really like the kids who are coming from Harlekijn. And they say, why? Because they seem so much more respectful. They seem better able to take care of themselves, more responsible. They seem to understand what it means to be safe. And you have to ask yourself, where did that come from? Well, it came from their experience here, and they've internalized it, and they're taking it to other places. Now, the other going back to the question, how come that became important to the children? It's because the teachers here said respect is important. What did they do? They were giving acknowledgments to those behaviors. So it's really important to put those two things together. To know what's important, you have to know from parents and teachers what's important. And then they becomes much more internalized. So it's a funny little scene, but you got to be careful about it because it teaches an inappropriate use as well as what the basic principle is.
Yeah, and for me the alternative is that if this doesn't work, you will have to fall back on punishing, and this is not what we wanted. One of the questions, well, it's nice to hear that some secondary schools are very happy with children from the Harlekijn, but what happens if children go to a school which is not common with PBS and they come in the real world? Can they survive?
Yeah. Great question, and I think one way to, well, I'm going to do it two ways, but one way to think about this is, my wife and I have two kids, and we wanted to make sure that they had the tools to be successful across many environments. I was telling the group this morning that at noon today, I have to go, I don't have to, but I've been asked to go speak at the Rotary. And the Rotary, which is businesses, are very interested in our children in schools learning about good work habits, learning about good social skills, to be successful in the workplace. Because employers want workers who are respectful, safe, and responsible. And they're very interested in the skills generalizing to transferring to other places. So what I think your kids are learning here are very transportable skills. I would much rather my child, my son and my daughter, to go out into the world with respect, responsibility, and safety than with nothing. I would much rather them have the tools to manage their anger more acceptably. At least they'll have something to work with. Because I want them to have something that allows them to at least have one step ahead of others who might be more unsuccessful when they go out. It's very important for you to remember that schools are about teaching academics. Academics. But again, you have to have the social skills to support those. And those social skills are important when kids leave school, to become good parents themselves, to become good community members, and to become good employees as well. I work at the university. I train university students, or not train, I teach university, I train them. I teach university students. I am also very amazed by some students coming in with good social skills. I also see a lot of university students coming in without good social skills. And I'd much rather have students from your school coming to the University of Connecticut than some other schools that I've seen.
You invited already some classes.
All invited.
We're welcome in
parents in the room, if you like your child to come to the University of Connecticut, just let me know. I want to get a special slot for you to get in because you came from Harlekijn.
Which was very, very interesting for the children. So I told them that you have been on the White House at a bullying prevention conference organized by Michelle Obama, right? What did you tell the people about prevention for bullying with PBS?
Yeah, I was very honored. It was very neat thing. I got to go to the White House. I was invited by Michelle and Barack Obama to go to what's called a briefing, which is sort of like a lecture about what are the best practices for dealing with bullying. And most of the experts were talking about what individual kids should do. And that's important. How to deal with it when you're being teased. What to do with it when you see a friend being teased. What to do about it when your child is being teased. Those are very important skills to have. What I went there with is to say that when kids grow up in a school or a classroom environment that's positive, that's caring, where they're educationally successful, and they learn about respect, responsibility, and safety, they're better able to deal with teasing in general. They're better able to deal with teasing and to deal with bullying behaviors and harassment and all that kind of stuff that goes on. They're also better to help individually if they have that foundation of good, safe schools, positive climate. So the message I took to Michelle, I didn't say Michelle, I said First Lady. I said, Michelle, schools are important places to do bullying prevention so that all students have the tools to deal with teasing, to help their friends, to help teachers, to help themselves. If your child does get in trouble and needs to have help, they're going to be better able to be helped because they have a caring environment for that to be done. If you don't have that, it's much more difficult to solve the bullying problem.
Thank you. And what nice would it have that you've been there. Are you
Guy? Do you think society and governments can or will change their vision or responsibility for maintaining public order and safety to prevention instead and rewarding good behavior like PBS does instead of punishment afterwards?
Right. The reason I was making noise is because he has such an electric personality. Such a dynamo.
That's why kids like him so much.
That's right. That's an interesting question because 15 years ago we started our center with just the idea to collect the best strategies for supporting kids' success. That was our whole start. We started with 5 schools, we tested it, we said let's bring together the best tools, the best strategies for teachers and parents to be successful. That was our whole goal, was just to help schools. As this began to spread, and teachers and parents were talking about how their kids are being more successful and so forth, not because of the research so much, but because parents and teachers found it to be so helpful to them. It became much more common to be heard in government, in state government as well. And what's interesting in the United States, and I'm going to brag a little bit, I was invited to go talk to Michelle, but I was also invited to go talk to Arnie Duncan. Arnie Duncan is the head director of all schools in the United States. And he started to hear about positive school climate. He started to hear about how positive school climate can support academic gains. And he asked about, what is this thing called PBS? What does it mean? I said, well, it's just really good social skills training. It's really about supporting children so they can become better citizens inside of schools. And I'm bragging. So now Congress is looking at building into its federal law. Do you all know something called No Child Left Behind?
Yeah.
That's the federal law in the United States. It's up now for what's called reauthorization or renewal, and they're revising it. And inside the revision, they're going to be having pictures of your principal in it to show off what PBS could be as a way to support school climate. We've encouraged them not to use PBS. We've just said, talk about positive schools, talk about prevention, talk about teaching respect and responsibility as core values inside of schools. Because now schools are saying that's an important part of the curriculum. It's not teaching moral development, what's right, wrong, and kind of the global stuff. It's about school success, and it's about work success. So what's happening now is it is becoming more interesting to Congress, although I think Congress is somewhat broken, but Congress is at least talking about maybe building it into federal law in the United States anyway, on how it might at least refine and support academic supports as well. So we're pretty excited about that, so I'm hoping that I'll have a chance to go see Barack and say, nice job, Barack, and acknowledge his work.
Okay, good things in Harlekijn. Could you give us some advice based on the things you've seen today?
Good. Well, one piece of advice which I think you've already started, and this event is like that. It takes 2 or 3 years with a very cohesive together staff and a leader at the school level and leaders at the regional level, is that what you call it? Across schools level. A director who I think is here someplace, who understands this idea, to have a cohesive, at least, vision about what it could look like. Now, that's part of it. The other most important part is to have parents and community members involved. Not so much to show up at school, but to instead say how important it is to support the social growth of children, to support what's going on at home and families. It's not just school alone, it's school, families, community, and neighborhood, where we want to create safe, respectful, and responsible behavior. It's across all those. So one word of advice is think about it across schools, but also think about it how you as a family member, you as a community member, can support the positive approaches in schools as opposed to the reactive ones, which tend not to be very successful. You don't have to say PBS, but what you have to say is prevention. What you have to say is teaching social skills, as opposed to leaving it up to chance. So that would be a big one. The second one, and last one is, I'd really like all of you, children too, to pat yourselves on the back. Do so. Pat yourselves on the back. Because you all are doing a great job of putting this in place. It's not me that does it. All I do is tell you what's possible. What really matters is children doing it, and teachers supporting that, administrators trying to keep up with it, or what have you. But I think it's really you all that make it work. And so I applaud you more than you should applaud me, because it's really your efforts that make this work.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Us, and it was really an honor to have you here. I have here a bottle of Harlekijn wine, and our slogan is je mag er zijn op de Harlekijn, and everybody can be himself or herself on the Harlekijn. And it's a good year, 2010. It's a year we started implementing PBS. So cheers, have a good trip, and thank you very much. U ook allemaal en de kinderen heel erg bedankt voor jullie komst, voor jullie vragen en het gesprek is geopend. Dus laat horen wat jullie ervan vonden. Er liggen gastenboek bij de koffie. Graag reacties, graag tips en scholen die meer willen weten over PBS. Ga met ons in gesprek, want wij vertellen er graag over. Bedankt voor jullie komst.